Have you ever tried to create a courseware for a sales class and just felt like you had no clue what to do? You ever been in that situation, BJ?
I think we all are when we try to start our curriculum.
Well, today we're going to lay out exactly what you should do and some mistakes that this guy and maybe that guy has made that you should avoid. Check it out.
Let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome to Sales 101, the B2B Sales Classroom. We're your co-hosts, Mr. Donald C. Kelly.
BJ Allen.
And we're super excited for you to join us today. If this is your first time listening to our show, know the show is designed exactly for you. It's a resource for sales leaders, sales professors who are trying to teach the next generation of sellers and want to get more insights from other professors and other industry leaders. We got all that for you. Today's episode, BJ and I are going to tackle something, as you heard in the teaser, that many of us struggle with, and that's creating that sales curriculum. If this is your first time listening to the show, go ahead and subscribe. We'll also make sure to notify you every time we drop a new piece of content, and be sure to check out our Substack as well and connect with us on LinkedIn, where we put more information about sales and other resources. BJ, that resource, the dreaded sales curriculum, trying to get that thing started. Talk to me. Let's talk about that. Like, what was your experience like? Bring me back to that first day. You're creating this class. You got invited to teach sales, and you're trying to figure out what in the world you're teaching. Like, just take me in your head, and what were you thinking?
So way before you and me wrote our sales textbook and the sales curriculum, I was asked to teach a sales class. I'm a PhD student. That's the very first class I taught was professional selling. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Right?
Were you teaching the class or subbing for?
I was teaching it. Like they told me over the summer, hey, in the fall, you're going to teach professional selling. And I was excited about it because I love the topic. I love selling. I love talking to people, the human interaction of business. But where to start, is totally daunting. It's daunting for any business curriculum, but I think it's especially daunting for something like sales, because the first question everyone struggles with is, how do I find a balance between the traditional kind of classroom, college, university learning style and sales, which is such applied discipline, right? It involves interactions and involves selling, talking, negotiations. Like, how do you do that at a university level? Yeah, it was frightening.
I think for me, I felt like when it was first invited, in my mind, from an industry individual per se, I felt like I knew sales, but I felt overwhelmed thinking, how do I take that knowledge of conducting a disco and for those who are new to some of these terminology, a discovery call, or doing a cold outreach, how do you make that into assignments, or how do you make that into curriculum? And I was just like, I felt when I remember reading courseware or going to college classes, and I remember all that my professors did, I'm just like, that was the overwhelming part, to think I need to get all of that. And then don't even talk about quizzes and tests. Like, I was like, no, that's gonna be dumb.
But really, that is the daunting part of it, because you have to teach all this knowledge that you have and all the things you want to share in a structured, cohesive way.
Yeah.
Right. Because college students have an expectation of how a classroom is going to be ran.
Yeah.
And we don't always have to meet that expectation or that mold, but we have to some degree, because that's how they're expecting to learn. So you're thinking, how do I teach this in such a structured way where each thing's going to rely on what we taught in the past, where I'm going to have to, because I have to have a schedule right before the semester starts, and I have to have a syllabus, because that's my promise to the students of what we're going to learn. So be able to take all those things you want to teach and then teach it in this kind of cohesive way. Yeah, it's super challenging.
Pretend we're starting off for the first time here, and you and I just riff back and forth. What are some things that the most perfect sales courseware or curriculum must have? So if I'm building a curriculum from the ground up, maybe where do I start? And let's just work through that together today. We're going to workshop this for you all, for you as you're listening. So if you're trying to do this yourself, get the notes. We're going to give
Mhm.
you everything that we know. So where should we start?
Yeah,
Here's some
I
thoughts.
think one of the most important things as a professor, because we usually teach these classes with a pretty broad name like professional selling or sales management, and you're like, it really is what's cool as a professor. You can kind of take this any way you want, right? Unless your school already has an established curriculum. But a lot of us, we don't. We have this thing called academic freedom, which is where you get to decide how you want to teach it. Most important thing is to realize you can't teach everything in one classroom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything that you want to teach, you just can't.
I think that was my mistake initially,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I would be gypping them if I'm not giving them everything. But it's like you said, it's really difficult to say I'm going to take, 15, 20 years of experience and give that to you as tough.
Yeah,
And it's even not even wise, because they're not even going to be able to take all of that. They just need enough to get to the next step.
totally. Yeah, and really, kind of what we mean by that is you can't teach a whole class, because a lot of these students, they don't even know what professional selling is when they sign up for the
Mm-hmm.
course, right? If you're teaching an intro course, so you can't teach what it is to be an entry level seller or BDR and SDR, what it's like to be an account executive, what it's like to be account manager or a customer success manager or a sales executive. Like, you just can't teach all that in one class. So I would say where to start is decide, what do I want the focus of my class to be?
Mm.
Am I going to teach entry level sellers? Am I going to teach account management? Like, what am I preparing my students for? And that's really kind of become the question that I use as my guiding principles. What am I preparing my students to do? What
Yeah.
job am I preparing them to do? And then that really helps narrow down the content that I want to talk about in my class.
Yeah, I find that part to be critical. For me, I knew that most of my students, when I got invited, they were probably going to be going into Silicon Slopes down in Utah and work for some of those companies, and working with, in my professional career, for my business, with some of these companies. I understand what they look for with those reps. So I think that once you get that piece down, is critical. The second part that I would say, I know this is a step that a lot of people will do, is identify what is the base. I love to barbecue. And if you listen to the first episode 0, if you haven't, go back and listen. BJ and I together when we were 19-year-olds. So one of the things we did was barbecue. And when you create a barbecue sauce, the base of the barbecue sauce, most of them are ketchup, and you build on top of that. For you, and if I'm going to build this ultimate courseware, I would identify what's that catch-up, meaning
Mm-hmm.
what's that courseware I might build off. And I know some folks, they'll use different books. Like, give a big shout out to Jeb Blunt. He has a great book called Fanatical Prospecting, and especially if you're focusing on a BDR sense, they're going to be just grinding. That's a good one. You got other books out there. Again, Mark Hunter, I talked about him. He has a curriculum, foundational curriculum. But I would find something that's going to be the something that I could build off of and use,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I don't have a textbook. And there are a lot of companies out there not a lot, but several companies out there that have textbooks that you can use. But if that's the case, use that. But if you're building it without any of that, I would find some kind of some kind of book that encapsulate your philosophy, that's going to help that group of people that you're helping. So in this case, BDRs, SDRs,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll be my step 2, and that's what I would probably look at.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Don. And I think if you talk to any people who have taught sales before, those who kind of said like, look, I can do this on my own. I'm going to kind of just design my own thing, and I'll kind of just teach all the ways that I want to teach. They teach them really good things, but it usually becomes non-systematic, and the students can't really see how one subject built on the other.
Go deeper on
Right.
that part.
Yeah. So, for example, like in our textbook, it's really built on the sales process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the beginning of the textbook talks about prospecting, and we spend a ton of time on that because that's what we're preparing students for. With ours is to be account or business development reps or sales development reps, entry level sellers, and then we walk them through that sales process. So after the sell, or after the prospecting, then you have discovery, and then after discovery, right, then you have the next sales phases. So we built ours off the pipeline, the sales pipeline or the sales funnel. And people may build on, so ours is a real process oriented. People may build on more of kind of the methodological things. So you mentioned some great ones. there's also, medic, there's challenger, there's spin, is we they all offer great things. And sometimes professors are like, well, I'll just take the best from this and the best from this and the best from this. But it ends up just confusing students, because a lot of them, this is their first time learning about cells. And if you can't teach it in a systematic way, it just becomes very confusing for them.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the pieces that worked so well with the students that we talked to who've gone through some of your classes and my classes, is they learned the process without memorizing the process, because every week the curriculum just guided them through that. And the other part to that too is, like, I feel it makes it simplifies it. When I first was selling, BJ, I remember I worked for a company, and one of the processes too that people talk about is the Sandler process, Sandler methodology. So with Sandler was the first one that I went through, and from my B2B days, B2C, business to consumer sales, that was like 45 minutes on a doorstep, or like you're doing stuff over the phone, selling Dish Network. But when I got to B2B side, it was much longer. I was like, how do I get the person from that first call to purchase when they want to do like 10 meetings and I'm bringing all these other people, and I didn't quite know that, and it comes confusing. But once I learned that there was a methodology or a method to follow, that process, I just knew I needed to get past this one, and then the next one, and the next one, and then the deal. And that part, that helps. And I think I've been a part of courses where I didn't get that full view. It was just piecemeal of cool stuff, but I didn't get the view of the map. It's like going on a road trip and not knowing where we're going, but we just stopped at all of these cool spots. I was like, what was...
Absolutely. No, you're right. I was talking to a student just a little while ago who loved his sales professor, but he just said, like, I learned a lot of good principles, but I didn't learn a process. And so when I actually got my first sales job, I had no idea what to do, because I didn't know where to start. And then when I met with my client, I didn't know, what am I trying to do next?
Yeah.
And so, all right, so we covered step one, which is think about, like, what is the job or jobs I'm preparing my students for. Step two is, what's my foundation? Is it going to be methodological? Is it going to be a process orientation? Like, what am I trying to teach my students from beginning to end? So in their head, they can think of the structure that the sales process takes.
Step three, now we got to make this thing fun, even more so. So if I were going to do this thing, and knowing myself, BJ, I don't want to do all of the work myself, but I love industry. Like I think in a sales world, it'll be great for industry expert. My best classes is when my professors gave us opportunities to practice industry stuff.
Absolutely.
Or got a chance to learn from industry individual. And I experimented this with my class, and I would bring clients and, colleagues, people I knew in the industry into the class. But if I was to build a curriculum, I would purposely build in those at different entry points. So like, I don't know if your kids do this, but I sure did this as a kid, where, parents tell you something and you're like, blah, blah, blah. But then the neighbor or somebody from church tell you, you're like, Mom, this was like a really cool thing. I heard this from BJ down the road. Like, right. Well, I told you that already. But it becomes cool and it's almost like validating, where, again, parents told you this, the professor told you this, but then now you have this sales leader coming into the class and telling you how to overcome objections. And it's like, whoa, that worked. But that's the element that I would do. And talk to me about that and what your feelings on that part, BJ.
I love that. Yeah. So for me, I mean, spot on. Step three is, how do I integrate kind of the real world application of my curriculum? So in step two, I've decided my curriculum, my method. Step three is, how am I going to involve that? So if you can't already tell, me and Donald, we're huge proponents of guest speakers. We think bringing in, the people in your community who work in sales to talk about it, it's great validation for the things that you're teaching. I even sometimes will have guest speakers who go against something that I say, and the students are all looking at you like, whoa, what? And I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, I'm not the end all know all of everything regarding sales. Like, people have different opinions. Maybe you as the listener, you're like, well, we're not allowed to do guest speakers unless they're vetted before. Or there's a lot of red tape in my university. And I say, that's fine. Right? The principle here is, how do you bring the real world into the classroom? And Donald mentioned another way to do that, which is the role plays. It is the case studies. It's the scenarios. So how am I going to take my curriculum and teach the students that it's not just a theory, that it's actually like a real world application.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's an integration of a lot of those things we talked about. Hopefully you have both role plays. Hopefully you have guest speakers coming in. Hopefully you have case studies where students going to talk about how would I implement this principle, right? So for an example, me and Donald in our classroom, we teach students about how to research prospects before you write that first cold email or first cold call. We teach that. And then I say, all right, I give them a scenario. Okay, here's, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly works at this tech company. I want you to go look at his LinkedIn, and I want you to identify how are some things we're gonna take this company, this fictitious company came up with. How are we going to personalize it to him based on his LinkedIn content?
Yeah.
And it only takes about 5 minutes before the student's like, oh, now I see why this was important.
And that we did an assignment where there's a software out there, and I mean, I guess this is our stuff. It doesn't really matter at this point, so we could talk about it. But there's a company called Apollo. They're not sponsoring this, but maybe not yet, right, Apollo? But but Apollo, I had the students use that, and they were able to get a free account, and they got up to like 50 leads or whatnot. But when I was trying to teach them, we went over sequences. And I was like, how can I teach them to create a sequence rather than just write it out? And I was like, you know what? Let's just create it in Apollo. But then I was like, why not even just test this thing out? So I was like, how many of you guys are graduating next year? Or and they'll tell me, how many of you are trying to get internships right now? And people would tell me that. And I was like, all right, so here's the assignment. And I made an assignment. I was really scared on doing this the first time because I was like, how do you judge it? But I created some ways to judge it with them. But they would create a sequence in Apollo, and they would use LinkedIn, like you're saying, and research companies they would like to work at and identify those potential bosses.
I love it.
And do an email to them to say, I want to do the outcome was to sell the appointment which was to a discovery call, so to speak, or exploratory call, or to pick their brain and learn about their industry, whatever. I had one girl, multiple students who did really well with this, but she in particular, she was not the traditional seller. And that's one of the things I've always discovered. And we'll do another episode on that. But some people that it's just not the individuals you thought was going to be the salesperson. And those tend to be the best salespeople because they're not trying to do sales. But she got an internship. She reached out through the sequence, got a hold of someone, was able to book an appointment, and got it. And that real world experience worked. And I think that third element makes it just magical. Is there anything else that you would include in to make that engaging part a little bit better, BJ?
Yeah. I think before we move to step 4, it'd be helpful to maybe even talk about step 3 even more, or give a little bit more context for it. So how do we apply kind of this real world stuff? And there's schools out there who are fantastic, who have very established sales programs. They have resources, right? They have office managers just for their program. And they have, classes where students hold real quotas, where they're actually selling. That's amazing. But some of you who are listening are like, look, I'm an adjunct professor. I do this, at 8 in the morning, and then I go work in my real world job at 9:30. Like, I don't have the time or the resources to teach my students Salesforce, to teach Apollo or whatever. And I think the principle here is, what can you do to make it feel real world? And we all have our different constraints, but even if it's just as simple as teach a principle, role play, get feedback, role play, like just things like that, students appreciate. Anything they can apply that, right? Like, that's why along with our textbook, we also designed the simulation, because we said, hey, we want students to be able to take it. And we know not all professors have time to do this in the classroom, or they have the time to watch a 30 Zoom calls and grade them. And so it was, hey, if we can design a simulation where people take the content and then they apply it in a real world setting, but then it's auto graded using AI and the simulation software. But there's a lot of different options out there. I think and I just want professors to feel like, hey, whatever you can do within your constraints is fine. You don't have to be like this amazing, stellar, resource oriented sales program. Like, as long as we're doing something to apply the real world, like, I think that's sufficient.
Yeah. It's leaving with it. For me, the best class I had at college was the IBC program at Brigham Young University in Idaho. And IBC was the Integrated Business Core. And you literally created business. But I think that's what you're getting at is just, again, if you're writing the emails, if you're role playing, like in class role plays, I found those to be fun. Like students, first couple of times, boy, they were messing. They were doing all kinds of craziness with the role play. They remembered it. They would leave and start remembering stuff. And when you ask them about some of their experiences, that's what it was. So you have a lot at your fingertips. I would say BJ is really good at this when it comes to creating like the assignments. Think about what your students doing an assignment and doing it at home or outside of class, and what's going to help them to best do that assignment. Give them opportunities to practice. And I think as you're building out your curriculum, don't just give them memorization of terms, give them opportunities to practice. And
Totally. Yeah.
So.
Even it's just as simple as when you learn prospecting emails, have them write one and then have them send it to another student, and then the student can give feedback. I mean, it can be just as simple as that.
One of the fun ones is always to I had students sometimes do practice with a student outside of the class that knows nothing about sales. So it can definitely get the more of I understand what you're getting at. But if you can't even understand somebody that doesn't quite, in a fundamental way, you can't articulate it, then that email needs to, we got a lot of fixing to do.
Right.
All right, BJ, I'm almost done with this, man. I'm ready to go teach. So I know who I'm going after. I know the base or the curricula, the structure of it. I also know what I need to integrate. What else am I lacking if I'm building out this program curriculum? Anything else that I need to include?
Yeah. So step 4 then becomes like, how do I put it into a grading format? What should my tests look like? Quizzes, assignments? Because as much as we want to say grades don't matter, grades matter. I mean, that's what to the students, they matter. And if they matter to the students, they have to matter to us. So how do I test them on this? How do I give them quizzes? How do I give them assignments? Yeah. So with this, I think a lot of times too, one of the mistakes that professors often make with this is trying to do too much, is saying, oh, we're going to learn this. I'll make this assignment, do this, miss this assignment. And it kind of overwhelms students. So I think finding assignments where they can integrate multiple things at the same time.
Give me an example how you did that, or one example, even if it's just an example here. Mary is listening to this episode. She want to apply it.
Yeah. So we have, so in my class, we teach them how to do video emails.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like BombBomb, those type of actual software video emails. So we teach them the structure of how to do that. But before that, we also teach them how to do research on prospects. Mm-hmm. Before that, we teach them how to use analytics to go into the CRM to find out who my ideal customer profile or my ICP is. So then we have an assignment where they actually do all 3 of those. So they have to find out who their ICP is. Then they have to identify someone who meets that profile. They have to research that person on LinkedIn. And then they have to design a video email that goes through all of those steps, right? So it's easier for me as a professor because now I just have one assignment to grade.
Yeah.
But it's easier for the students because they get to integrate all those steps together, and they're not thinking, well, who should I do and how do I need to research them? Because we've already taught all of those things. So I think that's maybe just one simple example.
What I love about that too is it goes back to the part that we're talking about. They learn the whole process, but it also makes it much easier to grade because you're probably just grading on, did they do this? Did they do this? And did they do this? And for me as a student, because here's the part with sales, we get it that you can write a sales email in multiple different ways. There's no the right or wrong way to write an email. But there's my theory, your theory, whoever has their theory of writing emails. But if we're teaching a set theory, the students should be able to know what that theory is, and then they can create it accordingly. Like, did you have a call to action, or did you have a good subject line with those elements? And that makes now that I know what I'm being graded on, I can do it accordingly as a student, but it makes it very easy for the professor now to not be subjective in the grading, but you can actually grade really well if they did the elements. And I think that's why step 2 is so critical in this whole process.
Yeah, I agree. That's one thing that new professors often get hit on in their teaching evaluations is students saying, well, I feel like the grading was too kind of loosey-goosey. I didn't really know what I were trying to do. And sometimes as professors, we want to give them a lot of room, but then we're like, well, this wasn't very good. And the student's like, well, why wasn't it good? And you're like, well, here's why. And I'm like, oh, you never taught us that, right? So you have to find a good balance as a professor of making sure the students know what's supposed to be in it.
Yeah.
But also a challenge that, a problem that I did when I first started teaching sales was I was like, wow, I totally, I love this concept. I'm going to give the students this assignment. And then when it came to grading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to take me hours to grade. Right. And so that's something that I wish I would have had in mind from the very beginning is the efficiency of grading is you have to design assignments and quizzes and tests where you're going to be able to have really like an efficiency aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so you can't do everything that you want because otherwise it's just going to take you forever to grade it.
No comment on that one. My TA. So what I did though, I had to put the system in place because when I was doing adjunct position, I was doing that and I was running the business and I had family life and I had responsibilities at church and I was like, this is craziness. But the school sold me. They're like, we're going to give you 2 TA. And I never got 2 consecutively. I had 1. But the TAs were helpful with that grading, but they needed to know the system again, like you're saying, to do it effectively. So
yeah, totally. And I think I'm glad you brought that up because we can find the efficiencies in different ways.
Yeah.
Right. So that could be, hey, I'm going to design a way where I teach my TAs exactly how this is going to be graded and they're going to be the ones that grade it and I'll kind of help with some of the harder things. Or it could be, I have a simulation that's going to be auto graded. I don't actually have to do any of the grading. All right. That could be, I don't know. I'm trying to think of, of other ways we could find efficiencies, but, or my test is only going to be multiple choice. I'm just going to use AI to ChatGPT is going to grade all my tests. No, don't do that.
No kidding, guys. Don't.
Right. But the idea is that you can find efficiencies in different ways based on the resources your school gives you.
Yeah.
But you just can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're going to get burned out really fast.
All right, BJ. So we could go on for days and talk a lot about this stuff, but somebody has to go teach a class right now. So let's go repeat those steps that you can get started with. Step 1.
So step 1 is, what job am I preparing my students for? Right? What are the grounded things I need to teach them?
Step 2 is going back into the process. Is there a bedrock that you build it off of? Is there a sales process that you might build around? But now that I know what I'm preparing my students for, how do I build for them? And we gave you several different ideas of what you can do with that. Step 3.
Step 3 is, how am I going to integrate kind of the real world? And how am I going to integrate role plays? How am I going to integrate softwares they might use? How am I going to integrate guest speakers to validate kind of the things that we're talking about?
And step 4 is around grading and also your testing. Make sure you can make your life a lot easier. We gave you some ideas of how you can do that. And that ties really back to your structure in the process. Make it efficient for you. This is going to be a shameless plug. As BJ and I told you about on our first podcast, we do have a courseware ourselves that we worked on tirelessly for months.
Don't ever write a textbook. It takes way too long.
Don't do it. But one of the things that we did was we took this courseware, and it's based off of a foundation of a program that I have for my sales organization called Sales Foundation. And it's like BJ said, it's a sequential process that we teach sellers. And in our courseware, we have a lot of those same elements. We also have videos included. Inside of the courseware, it's digital, so the students can just get access to it. And we have students who keep using theirs after they leave college. And then there's a simulation so they can actually practice, and the grading is built into it. If you'd like to check it out and learn from it, you don't have to use that. You can go ahead and drop us a message. You can find some of our information in the show notes, and we also have a link to it so you can check it out. But if you want to go ahead and design your own and want to get some feedback, BJ and I are more than willing to give you some feedback and on your curriculum and give you some ideas of how you can help out with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. If that's something that interests you, we'd love to talk to you about it. There's a lot of great resources out there, but I think the thing that students like the most about what me and Donna put together was that it's more of a training program that's taught in a university. And so they feel like, honestly, I think the most positive feedback I get are students who come back, after a year or two of working and say like, man, I've gone back to your textbook It's more helpful now that I'm a BDR than it was when I was in your class, right? And but I think there's a lot of great resources out there, and whatever you decide to use, I think that's kind of the goal for everyone, is that in a year or two, your students will come back and say like, man, that was super helpful. Thank you for teaching me real world application that I could use on my first day on the job.
100%. All right. So listen, we just gave you all of that 4 steps, and BJ and I actually have something for you. Whether you use our courseware curriculum or not, we have a little gift that we want to give you.
Yeah. So we're going to give you in written format these 4 steps, but then also we're going to include an example or two of what to do in some role plays in your classroom. So how can you help the students kind of apply some of the concepts in a fun way? I'll give you some of our really fun examples.
And if you want to get access to that, it's in our Substack. You can find the information down in the show notes. Just go click on it, get access to our Substack. We also have a link. You can check out our courseware, as we mentioned. But as always, listen, we want you to thrive. We're trying to give you all the resources possible to make sure that your sales program is successful as you help the next generation of sellers. Until next time.
Good luck selling.
See ya.